Hey everyone, welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to draw the seashell. And so this is part of the weekly sketch series where I'm doing guided drawings on a number of different topics. And if you'd like to join on Discord, you can join, and people over there are adding their drawings, doing the weekly sketch, and I'm giving feedback. And that's all for free just to join. So check that out. The link is in the description. So I'm going to do this in a few different chapters because I wanted to show you all step by step exactly how I draw this, and you can follow along with me. So step one is the pencil sketch. And for that, what I do is I start with a really light pencil sketch, and I'm using a 4B pencil, and I'm using the pencil on its side. So that's kind of important because when you use a pencil, and if you're using the tip of the pencil, you end up often with too harsh of a line. And so what you want to do in your pencil sketch is sketch lightly enough that one, it's easy to erase, and in this, I don't even really erase. I just go around it until I'm happy with it. So a lot of what you're doing when you're drawing is kind of like pushing and pulling a little bit with the form. And I think it's important to think about drawing in terms of that you're trying to give an impression of your subject matter. You're not trying to draw like a one-to-one version because it's not a photograph. So you don't need to worry so much about it being super perfect. You just want to give, the sense that it's 3D or like maybe a little bit of the texture, and you can make those decisions as you go with your drawing. And so here you can see that so far I've sketched out the shape. It looks pretty accurate for the most part. And now I'm going around and getting, that the divots, the ridges that are in the shell shape. And so for that, again, like you just need an impression. It doesn't need to be perfect. I didn't count. It's like, it's similar. Like if I was going to draw a tree, I wouldn't count every leaf on the tree. I just want it to be, mostly correct, right? So that's kind of what you're going for. And when you're drawing, it's ideal if you're drawing actually from life, because if you think about, a lot of times I know people draw from a photograph, and sometimes I know that that's sort of like the best case scenario that you have, like you don't have the actual object, and so it makes sense to draw from a photograph. But when you draw from a photograph, what happens is that it flattens out the object before you even start. So you're going from a flat object to another flat, surface, which is your drawing. Whereas when you start with the actual object, the shell, you see a lot more of the surface, and you see that it's actually 3D, right? So it's 3D object in space, and there's actual ridges that have these little sort of like depressions into the form. So, if at all possible, and you're doing this drawing, get a shell or get something similar that can give you like the similar type of challenge that that a shell would give. So now we're going to add our pen and ink. And so for that, what I want you to sort of like think about with this is that you want to be getting a few different things. You want to be getting some contrast, which is the difference between dark and light. And for this drawing, what I want you to think about and focus on this one thing is that I want you to have your marks, your lines be intentional. So what do I mean by that? So whenever you're drawing, sometimes you might have kind of like straggly or haphazard lines. And for this one, what I want you to do is make sure that you're really controlling your lines, and that all your lines are like sort of purposeful, right? So it's not just like lines going in all these different random directions, but that when you're thinking about the lines that you're using, you're being sort of like thinking about what kind of lines. Should it be short lines? They should be controlled. And then the second thing is I want you to just think about how you give an impression of the object. So again, it doesn't need to be overdone, because a lot of times when you're drawing, what you actually want to do is just give an impression so that you give the person who's looking at it sort of like some work to kind of like make sense of the drawing, if that makes sense. So it's like you don't want to give them too much. You don't need to give them every single detail. Instead, what you want to do is give an impression of your object. So that's why, if you look back at art history and things like that, you'll see that a lot of the most famous painters, they didn't try to draw hyper realistic. They were instead more concerned with like, what's the feeling? What's the vibe that you're trying to give to the viewer of the person who's looking at your drawing? If you're looking to get better at pen and ink drawing, I have a course where we go through all of these topics, but in a very step-by-step guided approach. So if you're looking to see like faster results for your drawing than maybe you've been getting, and you want a really guided approach to drawing and learning drawing, it's basically equivalent to like a college level drawing one course. But it's not as expensive. And so I'll leave the link for that in the description, and you can check that out if you like. And I want to point out a few things in the drawing now that I think are important just to notice. So one is notice how kind of at the base of the shell, I'm getting really heavy with like denser lines. That's going to give a little bit more form. And then the part, like on the bottom is flatter. It's like not as dimensional. So those are some of the things that I want you to notice in your drawing. And now, once you have your drawing to how you like it, assuming you're using gray paper or mid-tone paper, you can come in with some white marks, which will make it even more visually interesting. And so here I'm using Posca for that. You could also probably use like a white colored pencil would work pretty well, or a white charcoal pencil. So that's something that will just give it a little more contrast because you already have your base of your paper is the mid-tone, and then you're adding your pen, of course, which is your darks, and then you can come back in with some lights. So that's something, if you want to just make it a little extra, you can do that. If you're new to my channel and you happen to come upon these videos, I hope you'll consider subscribing and liking the video. If you like the video, it definitely helps it go out to way more people. So please like the video or even leave a comment if you enjoyed the video. And I hope to see you on Discord. And thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all soon.